I want to start one of my most ambitious projects so far, building a completed Minecraft medieval village. This has been a goal of mine all along my survival Minecraft journey, but since I've left survival behind me and I now exclusively build in creative, I will achieve this build here, instead of by mining thousands of blocks for unnecessary hours. If you like my videos, don't hesitate to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton and doesn't cost you a penny. Building in creative also opens up free use of tools like Axiom's Tinker, which acts as a better debug stick and allows improving much quicker than if I stayed on playing survival. I'll explain these things later in the video. In today's episode, I build another structure asset, and by the end, I'll have terrain on which to put the village. I will also try and touch on my personal building style and what I've learned about it during the few years I've been building for. Alright, to be real with you, I had no idea what I was gonna build, so I just went for it and started building a big tower. When talking about my personal style, I've learned over time that I love going with the flow. I just get a vague idea of what I want, and then I keep going until a finished build shape is born. It was this exact case for the village guard build I made today. I thought about what would look great added to the tower, and if I didn't like an idea I came up with, I just deleted it and started again. Now I want to get into wall texturing techniques, and what I like to use. Over time, I've used 3 different methods of texturing. These being stone walls, I chose a palette of grays and some mossy blocks for accents. The first wall variant is the first one I ever learned how to use. A very messy way of just randomly alternating blocks with no thought behind it. It's by far the easiest to do, but the result is, well, not that great. I'm kind of ashamed I did this for the majority of my building journey. The second one is a very popular method, the gradient, where you choose a row of blocks and build by layers to make a transition between them. This technique depends greatly on the size of the wall you want to build. A smaller wall can't support a great gradient, and they look way cleaner when viewed from afar anyway. Now, onto my favorite way to texture walls, and builds in general actually. I'm not sure how to call it, but let's name it the painting style. I don't think I have rights to naming it, as I'm not its creator or anything, but for the purposes of this video, that'll do. I start off by adding the shadows where shadows would form, like under roofs or overhangs. Then, I use my other palette blocks to add spots of color onto the build, blending them in with other blocks when necessary, like the coral blocks I used here, and then finishing by using some sort of colored block that fits the theme and build to add a nice pop of color. On the guardhouse, you will see me adding dashes of pink and white to add interest to the otherwise boring, light colored sand. This is the principle I like to go by nowadays, and I never use the first technique anymore. I also rarely do gradients because I don't build on such a big scale where gradients are effective. Even if we're talking about other things like the wooden frame, I do the same thing, but instead of adding spots of color, they just become one single block. This build was a blast to make, and I really enjoyed it. Another thing I should explain is the Tinker tool in Axiom. It's essentially an improved debug stick. It allows for things like placing decorational blocks onto leaves, which is how I achieved the flowering bushes on my last build, placing seeds or other plants on any blocks, and even changing block states by right-clicking things with your fist, which also works on fences and walls. This allows for a level of detail effectively unobtainable to survival players, and can level up your builds incredibly much. I highly recommend you try out Axiom. It's free and absolutely amazing. In my opinion, it's one of the best building mods out there. Now back to the build. I added some flags to the top, and I think they add a nice blue accent to the whole thing. Although, in the end, I did decide on toning down on these colorful accents by changing the red roof to a more tame brownish jungle and mud combo, which I'm actually glad I did. It looks better like this, and it doesn't look as messy. I think it's time we move on to the terrain. To be honest with you, I am quite a beginner at making terrain. I used the terrain tutorial video by Tom on Mars to figure out some commands I could use, and then ended up using the TerraGen commands and pattern commands that you are given access to from the Archeon plugin. A normally paid plugin, but if you play on a server like the Bakery, where you can apply to use Archeon, you can get to use it for free, another huge Bakery W. After using Euclidean TerraGen and layering some natural and simplex TerraGens on top of it, I get an interesting plains landscape broken up by these geometric mountain shapes, like mini plateaus. I textured the plains using a simplex pattern command using green blocks and some rooted dirt for a patchy ground feel, and then I messed around with changing the biome of my plot for grass color, but I end up sticking with the plains one in the end. After putting in some foliage on the ground, the terrain is ready to use. In future videos, I'll make sure to include some tree designs and how you can make those, and integrate your builds into the terrain more, but that's going to have to be for another time. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I really appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm always trying to improve my craft and try out new things with every new upload. With that, I'll see you on the next one.